It's my pleasure and my honor to be able to present to you the 2025 version of a Boundary Waters Connect Year in Review. I just actually this weekend was in Grand Marais hosting or facilitating a conversation inspired by the Story of Us film that some of you might have seen at the Ely Film Festival. And I was able to cue that moment of communal interaction off with a note on extemporaneity, extemporaneous speaking, which means there's a little bit of thought that went into preparation, but the rest of it is mostly off the cuff, which is what we have here today. So please join me on this epic journey we're about to go on. A little bit of context for you. So this is something that I'm still trying to figure out how to communicate with more clarity to anyone who's paying attention to Boundary Waters Connect. So I want to share with you what I have labeled here the Boundary Waters Connect family tree. So Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness is a nonprofit organization that was founded by residents of Northeastern Minnesota to do conservation work in this region in the 90s, 96, 97, 98, something around there. And most people are more familiar with a very popular or widely known program of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness, which is the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters that got formed in about 2012. This Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters is overseen by the nonprofit board of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness. And in 2019 or so, some members of this nonprofit board said we should form an economic and community development task force to address some of the things that we are for in terms of this community and communities along the edge of the wilderness. The mission of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness is, paraphrasing here, to do conservation work in the Quetico Superior ecosystem. And so in 2021, Boundary Waters Connect started taking shape based off of the work of that Economic and Community Development Task Force. And I was hired as an independent contractor to do part-time work in 2021, which mostly included taking on Tuesday Group. And we got to hear a little bit about that when we did the Shown send-off party and the history of Tuesday Group. And then that work became full-time in 2022. So this is the fourth full year of Boundary Waters Connect within that context. And the Boundary Waters Connect effort is about celebrating what we're for and addressing community and economic health. And as a strategy, we don't usually use Boundary Waters Connect communication channels to address Save the Boundary Waters talking points. We feel it's very important to set that particular conversation topic aside so that we can connect on additional topics that warrant being addressed holistically. And some of the things that drive the work of Boundary Waters Connect include our strong belief and indeed the actual scientific research that asserts that strong social connection is vital to human wellness and economic wellness too. Meaningfully connecting across difference positively impacts economic growth and community development, particularly at a grassroots level, which is the level at which we work. We believe and understand that the localization of entertainment, education, entrepreneurship, food, and more are all essential to rural economic resilience and growth. We understand that helping people learn about themselves, learn about each other, and the place in which they live increases their capacity and our collective capacity to collaborate and localize and grow our more resilient economy. And we also understand that Ely and other communities along the edge of the wilderness have great potential due to this exceptional landscape and our equally exceptional community. So that is just some context to ground you in the work that we did this year, which through many programs and learnings ended up coming out to the phrase of we're trying to do work to help strengthen our social fabric. That's a lot of what inspires the work of Boundary Waters Connect. And this work is maybe most visibly done by myself and my colleague Jess Kulik, but it actually also includes the volunteer support of this Economic and Community Development Task Force, which includes some members of the Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness Board, as well as some folks who are participating at large. They're community members who operate on this board, and we meet monthly, and they help advise Boundary Waters Connect activities and give context, insight, connections, and just generally help ensure the values alignment of the work. I should have said that people are invited to holler a question if you have one, but we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. So continuing with this little family tree, you can see Boundary Waters Connect here, and we've sort of identified essentially 4 lanes that we operate within. And so we have our Hello Neighbor programs and services. We understand that one very exciting strategy for economic growth is new resident recruitment and retention. We learned from our friends at the University of Minnesota Extension program that that's actually considered sort of like the 4th wave of contemporary understanding of economic development. An older model might have said the way that you grow an economy is to court big business and big industry and get them to come bring jobs to your town, when in fact what communities need right now is to, especially rural communities like ours, is to talk about our assets and share our assets in a way that attracts new residents into our community, because they can bring with them on occasion jobs, but they also bring with them engagement with the community that then grows hopefully the schools and the hospitals and the restaurant commerce and all of those things. We also have Tuesday Group, which you know about very well, so I'll refrain from saying more for now. We do Ely for Ely programming. If Boundary Waters Connect is folks connecting for their personal social connections, Ely for Ely is about putting your work hat on, which doesn't mean that you have to be engaging as a representative of an institution or a business, but you're sort of saying, myself as a community member is here to do the good work of contributing to the community. Where can I volunteer? How can I contribute? And then there's this sort of more aspect, which actually includes a lot, and we'll talk more about that in a second. I'm going to try to go a little bit chronological in order for all the different things we did in 2025, including but not limited to hosting, in collaboration with the Ely Folk School, this free showing of a documentary called Join or Die. Raise your hand if you happen to be at that showing. Thank you so much. It's a really great documentary film, and it's chronicling the research of Robert Putnam, who wrote a book called Bowling Alone about the relationship between civic engagement in clubs and organizations and the health of democracy. And he was living in Italy and studying democracy as they were transitioning out of a dictatorship and into new democracies, or a new democracy. And that's where his research comes from. We had 75 people at that event, and 37 stayed for really engaging discussion. We asked a lot of questions of the audience, and we're still in the process of using what conversation took place that night to build a research project for our community to sort of take stock of our community capital, I guess, as it were. We also, in March, hosted a new resident social event under our Hello Neighbor umbrella. And it was about that time that I started reading this book called Platonic: How the Science of Attachment Can Help You Make and Keep Friends. This author, Marissa G. Franco, does a lot of work helping adults make sense of how to make new friendships. We know that Ely is attracting new residents, and we know that your connections with your neighbors helps make your new town feel like home, but we also know that it can be really hard to do that. And so we rely on resources put together by Dr. Franco and others to help us feel the courage we need to do what we need to do to make the relationships that will make us feel at home in our new town. And that really inspires, that's at the heart of the new resident socials that we do on a semi-regular basis. And again, we hosted one in March at the Ely Folk School. I learned when I was putting this presentation together that I've actually been doing a terrible job of taking photos. This photo, I think, is from like 2023. So I'm going to work on that, and Jess is going to help me. We have been having fun playing Jeopard Ely at these new resident social events, which we did again in March. And then we've also continued our practice of having one-on-one coffee dates with new residents. And so please know that that's available to really anyone. We have on the Boundary Waters Connect website, there's a place where people can go and request a coffee date. And I just want to share to this audience, we try not to be the person reaching out to new people for these things, because we really want new folks to take the initiative to opt in. So please, if you meet a new person, say, go to the Boundary Waters Connect website, fill out the form on the Hello Neighbor tab, ask for a coffee date, because that's how we can get to know people one-on-one and help plug them into the community in ways that are custom to their interests and their context. Also in March, we helped sponsor the Ely Film Festival, which was a thrill, a 4-day festival, 15 feature films, 11 short blocks, 36 volunteers, 71 volunteer shifts. And I got to work really closely with Chris Chandler on this project and have another picture of some of our volunteers helping with setup. It's a really big undertaking, and it's a pleasure to be a part of it all. The Ely Film Festival celebrates the power of storytelling through film to broaden perspectives, cultivate belonging, and deepen connections in our local and global communities. And I love this photo. Love it when we're all in a room together, thinking thoughts and learning. Something that was really big for me this year and Boundary Waters Connect is that we actually produced a film that then showed at the Ely Film Festival this year. Raise your hand if you had a chance to watch this film. Oh, thank you, friends. It's called The Story of Us, and it's the story of us finding belonging on the edge of the wilderness. My friend M. Baxley moved from Minneapolis to Grand Marais about 10 years ago, and I moved from St. Paul to Ely about 7, going on 8 years ago. And we found we were really drawn to try to tell the story of what that felt like and why we did it and what was hard about it and what was good about it. And I also use the word extemporaneous in this context because, we really had a unique challenge. We had 10 days of in-person collaboration at the Tofty Lake Center and enough budget for about 30 hours of asynchronous productivity time to try to produce a film. And I don't know if you know this, but that's not a lot. And I sort of likened it to, raise your hand if you've ever seen or know what the TV show Chopped is. Right? Oh, wow, really? People don't watch Food Network? Come on, you guys. Well, here's the deal. A chef will get a basket and they don't know what's in it. They open the basket and the timer goes off. They get 30 minutes and they have to make something with a bunch of pichos, some leftover short rib, and bok choy. And they have to use those ingredients. And that's how I felt about this project. We knew we wanted to tell a story of awe. We wanted to talk about the lure of the edge of the wilderness. And we had 10 days and 30 hours of productivity to make a movie. The themes of the movie were that, you really need people who relocate to these places would do well to show up, right? Step 1, show up, go to things, make yourself known, introduce yourself to people, engage. And that's actually affirmed by the work of Marissa G. Franco in the book Platonic I was telling you about. Step number 2, seek awe. It's all around us. And I think that's a lot of why we're driven to move up here. I shortened this to dance, but in the film, it's actually do the dance of rupture and return. There's so many layers of relationship in a small town. It can be really hard to navigate, and it doesn't always go smoothly. It didn't necessarily go smoothly for us when we were spending 10 days in a cabin together on Tofty Lake, right? We struggled sometimes, and there were ruptures in our dynamic, but we had to return because we wanted to see this project through. And we were able to make a metaphor of that for how we all have to do this in our communities, our small, rural, remote communities on the edge of the wilderness. And that can be a really vulnerable process, and it requires that we see each other and that we're willing to be seen by each other. And so those are the basic tenets of the film if you didn't have a chance to see it. And just this last weekend, like I said, I was in Grand Marais with M, facilitating a conversation on these themes after showing the movie at the Arctic Film Festival at the North House Folk School. And that was a pleasure. There were 90 people who stayed and watched the film, and about 50, I think, who participated in the discussion afterwards on those themes. And I mentioned, in the film, we call this do the dance of rupture and return. And this motif of dance just kept coming up. So I put these photos in here because my friend and collaborator, M. Baxley, since then has gotten really into the dance scene in Grand Marais. And we're having all these really fun, juicy conversations about basically the philosophy and the community benefit of dance. So stay tuned for where those conversations are going to go. Speaking of staying tuned, save the date, March 11th through the 15th, 2026. The Ely Film Festival is going to happen, and we're really looking forward to it. The planning committee is convening. We're having fun. Lucy is in the midst of leading a crew of volunteers in screening submissions, and I think it's shaping up to be a wonderful program. Raise your hand if you think you're going to be there. Oh, yes, I love to see it. Love to see it. In due time, we'll be seeking volunteer support, but we don't have that ready yet. Also, moving along in the year, in May, we helped sponsor and co-host a spring storytelling showcase, Experiences with and the Meaning of Water, featuring Michael Kleber-Diggs, who was another Tuesday group presenter this year. And then the most exciting thing maybe that happened this year is that Boundary Waters Connect was able to expand. And Jess Kulik, who had been working, our friend Jess, who had been working specifically as an admin person for the campaign to save the Boundary Waters, actually switched over and midway through the year started working specifically for Boundary Waters Connect. And so that represents a near doubling of the human resource capacity of the Boundary Waters Connect program. I say near doubling because Jess still does a couple hours a week of admin work for the broader organization. So I have these photos here just to celebrate the pleasure and joy that has been working with Jess and having her officially on board as a member of the Boundary Waters Connect crew. So I'm going to invite her up to the podium to say a few words about her Boundary Waters Connect year in review.
So I forgot mine and the phone for the crowd. So we read that. You would think that I would have that down since I've set this up every week. But in fact, I forget it when it's my turn. I just want to say that last year when Lacey did the Boundary Waters Connect year in the review, there was more than one person that during their question referenced both of us as being part of the Boundary Waters Connect work. And so thank you to all of you who ascribed my participation in Boundary Waters Connect programming to me doing it as my job. And now I am. And part of why I think that it's been such a pleasure in my life is because I grew up coming here my entire life. I've been coming to this place since I was 2 years old. My bonus family has a house on White Iron. Many of you have heard me talk about this. And I know when people ask you why you moved to Ely, they sort of expect this narrative of that you came to on a Boundary Waters trip and you loved the experience of that and you just thought, I have to live near the woods. And that is not my story in the slightest. I have done many Boundary Waters trips. So when I tell you that I don't foresee me being in a canoe anytime soon, it's not because I have never been in a canoe. I'm actually very good at paddling. I'm a strong paddler. I was a swimmer for a long time. I'm great on that. I don't enjoy it. And I don't really enjoy tons of hiking. But my experience growing up coming to Ely was the town. We came here to visit my grandparents. We came here to spend time in town. I was going to the Pebble Spa since it opened. Back when my grandparents would give all of my cousins and I $100 for Christmas, and that $100 was used as a massage at the Pebble Spa since the year that it opened. And so my love of Ely and my want to move to this place had to do with the town and the people and the relationships I built in my summers and school breaks coming here and living here. So when I moved here, I went to a Tuesday group. I moved here in July and I went to my first Tuesday group and I sat where Kelsey is sitting. And I thought to myself, this is amazing. This room where I show up once a week, eat food at a super safe place for my autism where nothing ever changes. It never has in the entire 30 years that I've been coming to this place. Not a single thing in this building has changed. Very impressive. And I love that as an autistic person. And I sat there and I thought, wow, this is what I want my job to be. It would be so cool if my job could be learning new things once a week in a room full of people eating food that is super safe. And now look at this. You manifest something, you put it out there, and you come neatly and you say that this is going to be my job, and now it is. And that connection and that community and that welcoming space of being able to show up as my authentic self with the stories that I have and the love that I have for this town and its history and the people that I've met along the way translates so much into the work that Boundary Waters Connect does as a whole. And I'm thankful that I get to be part of it officially and also unofficially because I'm still friends with Lacey. So we spend a lot of time together, officially and unofficially. And that's part of what I love about a small town. I see all of you here. I also see you at the grocery store. I also see you at Northern Grounds. I also see you walking the street. And that, I think, is part of what the power is of our dance of rupture and return, is knowing that I will still see you tomorrow. And we will all be together come January 7th, I think, 6th, for the next Tuesday group. So in an excitement of being able to transition, it also feels in a lot of ways, ooh, like I am returning to my family now that my grandparents have passed, and I'm thankful that I get to be here and share this with all of you instead. So I'm going to pass the microphone back to Lacey, but that's my reflection on half a year worth of official Boundary Waters Connect work and 2.5 years of unofficial.
Yeah. Thank you, Jess. I am, now that you have been integrated more fully, right? You were always volunteering so much for Boundary Waters Connect, but now that you're a staff person, I really honestly don't know how I ever functioned without that support that you offer. Truly. Okay, so that was in June, right? We made that change happen June 1st. And so moving along in the calendar year, we had our Boundary Waters Connect barbecue. And again, I'm realizing I've done a terrible job taking photos because this is the only photo I have from that day. But I was very excited about the replica de Havilland Beaver plane. And so that's the photo we got. In August, Boundary Waters Connect for the second year in a row was the primary sponsor of the Ely Rotary Club Casino Night. And that was a very fun and pleasurable thing. I got to be part of a 3-person human slot machine. So if you're intrigued by what that means, then you'll have to go to the next casino night. Boundary Waters Connect was a sponsor of the Ely Marathon. Which has always been such a pleasurable and fun thing to do. We're very sad to understand that the marathon is pausing kind of indefinitely, but we are going to retain the funds that we use to sponsor the marathon. And if anyone has any ideas for fun community activities for the day that the marathon would have taken place, we're still open for conversations about how we can support efforts in lieu of the marathon. And so that's, I must have messed up my slides, but here we are. The next new resident social in a traditional format, because we'll talk about the non-traditional format, save the date for Thursday, April 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. That will be our next Hello Neighbors social at the folk school. And like I said the traditional new resident social has a kind of clear format. And in classic fashion, when Jess came on board, we said, we're not taking on any new projects this year. But in the meantime, Kelsey Lee of Potluck Kitchen and I had been brewing some thoughts, and the three of us met, and what had been plans for a traditional new resident social quickly became this dream of an epic Chapman Street block party. And epic it was. We had 10 Chapman Street-based local business and organization sponsors. We had the most fun and lovely time. And it it seemed like all the stars aligned, right? Right as the mural started going in, we started working with a local carpenter, John Scully, to install these planter boxes, which would then hold these kind of cafe lights that we installed in the park. And then we've also contributed to Puddle Jumper Park by adding those umbrellas over the tables that the Ely Rotary Club put together. So the idea of the Chapman Street Block Party and the advancement of the mural, which was sponsored and organized by Alley A Realty, these things, the stars all kind of aligned and came together. And I mean, we just had to host the Chapman Street Block Party. And we had such a blast. Raise your hand. Were you at the Chapman Street Block Party this year? Oh, wasn't it just so fun? It's always nice when the weather cooperates, I'll tell you that much. But I love a photo like this where you just see the community coming together, friends and neighbors. Oh, look at, I see some familiar faces here. You guys, you made it. We gave away prizes, and this is one of my favorite pictures from the whole event. And just generally appreciated each other's company and the camaraderie. So that was the Chapman Street Block Party falls under the Hello Neighbor umbrella. And we decided that the layer that we were adding was, yes, we want to help neighbors get to know each other, but we also want to make sure our neighbors are introduced to the local businesses and know the local business owners. And we saw an opportunity that Chapman Street sometimes, especially if you're a visitor to this community and you drive up and down Sheridan to get where you're going, sometimes Chapman Street can get a little overlooked, and there's so much potential on Chapman Street. So we had a really good time shining a spotlight on Chapman Street, introducing some of our friends and neighbors to our neighbors who are business owners. And then another marquee sort of program lane that Boundary Waters Connect is in is this Ely for Ely effort, which began in earnest, I think, in August 2023. Abby Dare and I were having coffee at Northern Grounds, which I think is where all the best ideas take shape. I'm not sure. There's a lot of good coffee shops. I'm not trying to be biased. Whatever coffee shop in town is where all the best ideas take shape. So this year we had our second annual workshop. This time around, we had 100 and, well, here, I'll get there in a second. I want to introduce you to the Ely for Ely Planning Committee. So we have Freya Alioff, Beth Chapman-Tedrow, Abby Dare, Jess Edberg, Liz Engelman, Rachel Headland, Jess Kulik, Kathleen Miller, Lisa Porthan, Emily Rose, Thea Sheldon, and Riley Smith are all volunteer members of this planning committee. We meet at least once a month, but in the lead up to the workshop, you better believe we were asking a lot of people's time. But that was just sort of the like culmination of a year's worth of Ely for Ely programming. The core idea behind the lane, that Ely for Ely effort, is that Ely has an abundance of potential, and as community leaders, we can make an impact in achieving that potential. And I think furthermore, that work doesn't have to be a heavy lift. I think there's a lot of community leaders who are already giving a lot, and we're not trying to ask people to give more. We're trying to facilitate ways that we can work together smarter and invite new people to the table so we can actually sort of lighten the load while still having an even greater impact. And one of the philosophy that we're bringing into this whole program is that these aren't just meetings, they're an opportunity to develop and advance a mindset. It's not just, the workshop isn't an event, it's a part of a process, because it's not like, oh, we had a workshop and now we figured it out and we're done. Good thing we did that, right? We understand that we're also not the first effort of its kind. There's been highly engaged community members trying to create synergy and bust through silos and build bridges for a long time. And so we are kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, and we also are really at the tip of a big iceberg in terms of the work. And so, like I said, it's not just an event, it's part of a process to help shift a mindset. And we know we're playing the long game, but one of the phrases that came out of the workshop from one of the extension presenters was, if you take into consideration the lifespan of the boomer generation and the forthcoming transfer of wealth that is going to happen. St. Louis County, for example, has I think, what is it, like $11.7 billion projected to be changing hands as the boomer generation goes through the cycle of life, and that metamorphosizes to reintegrate with the fungi. Um, the phrase that came out of that I am really thinking about is the Ely community has 5 years to make a 10-year plan. If we want to be really wise and thoughtful about this forthcoming transfer of wealth, and if we want to be strategic and we want to make the most of the opportunities we have 5 years to make a 10-year plan. And so when I say playing the long game, I mean it. These efforts aren't, maybe we aren't going to see our intended outcomes in a year, 2 years, 3 years. We're trying to enact change that will be rippling and having exponential impact for decades. And going back to the theme of showing up, just getting that 105 people in the room was really, really powerful. Last year, we had 9 educational gatherings, and we had an average of 28 people attend those. And then with the blogs and the videos that we posted online, we've got about 243 plus more engagement points with that work, which we're really proud of. And yes, this year's workshop had 105 registrants representing 48 different nonprofits, 32 different businesses, and we had the engagement of 4 public government officials. The workshop was mostly included, some networking, a keynote address by Ben Winchester, and 2 opportunities to go to a breakout session on 3 different topics. And this whole thing was a collaboration with the University of Minnesota Extension Program. And I'm really, really proud of how it's been going and where it's going. And there's a QR code here. The keynote address by Ben Winchester is on the Boundary Waters Connect YouTube channel, and I just encourage you to check it out. It was highly energetic, and although we know we can rely on Abby Dare to be a very expressive person, she did describe it as electric. And it was. So it's just he's a rural sociologist who's been paying attention to greater Minnesota for a long time, and he has a very impassioned, and maybe you could even say vehement argument that Ely is not a dying town, which I think a lot of us in this room know to be true, but not everyone does know that. And it's useful to be able to see some of the numbers that he put together and make meaning of the trends. And Tuesday group, Tuesday group. I love you guys. We hosted 3 Meet New Elyites, and that introduced us to 21 new individual people. Can we get a round of applause for Randy Greiner, who makes it happen? And we have another program. The second Tuesday group in January will be a Meet New Elyites. Is that correct? January 13th. Mark your calendars now. So in total, this season, we had 45 Tuesday group gatherings, which I just think is so cool. And it included hearing from some of our friends and neighbors. And I'm sorry for totally cherry picking these, but we got to hear from our friend Chuck Bream. We got to hear from Roger Powell and a lot of folks that we know and who are near and dear to our hearts. And that's one of my favorite things about Tuesday group. I love sitting here and learning, but I love it when I get to learn more about a friend and a neighbor through what they have to say. And of course, we did our History of Tuesday group program in conjunction with a Steve and Ann Schoen send-off party, as Steve was such a huge part of making Tuesday group happen for over a decade before Boundary Waters Connect was able to take that baton. In total, we were averaging 55 in-person Tuesday group attendees weekly, with an average of 7 more on Zoom. About 80% of all Tuesday group presentations were recorded and posted on YouTube, where so far they get about an average of 43 views each. So I feel really proud of the reach that this program has and the way that we're able to sort of, I don't think that we're steering the conversation, but we're steering people's attention and thoughts in a direction. And then we all get to grapple with those thoughts and what we're learning. And I'm really proud of that. It's my favorite thing about my job. Also, though, turning back into a bit of economics talk, let's say, for example, 20 lunches are sold on average over the weeks and they're valued at $25 each. Or let's flip it. Let's say lunch usually averages $20 with a tip, but 25 people on average are eating lunch. When this place is full, it's 46 lunches if every seat is taken with a lunch purchasing person. But again, we're being very conservative here. We don't always hit those targets. Times that by 45 programs, that's $22,500 annually of community commerce at the Grand Daily Lodge as a result of the Tuesday Group program. And I think that's kind of cool. Thanks. Mom's clapping. Everyone has to clap. Sometimes I feel like $10,000 of this is me personally, but it's not. Okay, and now on the topic of a little bit more, right? We've talked about our Hello Neighbor, our Tuesday group, our Ely for Ely stuff, but there's still more that we do. Boundary Waters Connect is part of the Ely Cultural Alliance, which this year launched a pilot program of an Ely Cultural Alliance passport, which was a really fun effort. And it's been really lovely to connect with the different organizations that are part of the Cultural Alliance. Let's see, is it risky to name them off? It's risky. Lucy said, don't do it. Okay. We've also been working with local artist Jane Dandrin to have some temporary art, some window paints at the office this year. She did blueberries for Blueberry Festival. We had a fall themed design in time for the Chapman Street Block Party, and we'll be working with Jane again to have a winter scene. So be sure to pop over to First Avenue and Puddle Jumper Park to see what she comes up with this time around. Boundary Waters Connect has been a supporter of Ely Trivia Night because we share our speaker system, but we're also very proud to say that maybe we were a part of nudging the Boathouse towards getting a system in-house system, and that's really cool. We are so appreciative of the volunteers who make Ely Trivia Night happen, and we've supported History Happy Hour in that way as well. We are sponsors of the Northern Lakes Arts Association. And a new project we worked on this year was actually working with nonprofit leaders to submit book recommendations. And this weekend, there will be a new display at Paragus Northwoods Company Bookstore where you can see local Elyite book recommendations with a little blurb as to why Lucy Soderstrom recommends you read the book Driftless by David Rhodes, and so on and so forth. And then we worked with local artist Audrey Jerome to commission this poster that will hang on the wall explaining to anyone who comes to the store what this program is. Boundary Waters Connect has been motivated by the idea of serving as a thought leader in our community. We want to be known for adding helpful nuance to a conversation, cultivating engagement with topics, grappling with new thoughts, expanding our notions of what community and economy are. And we believe very strongly that reading is important to that. And so that's what this is at the heart of this project. And to that end, we actually have an article in the Ely Winter Times on this very thing. So please do pick up a copy of the new Ely Winter Times and be sure to check that out. Jess and I co-wrote a piece where we did a little bit of synthesizing of some of the recommendations. So please check out that bookshelf over the weekend. And then I'll just sort of get to wrapping up by saying there's all that stuff that we do, these events that we host, dozens and dozens of events and programs and opportunities to come together. But I also love to spend my time just thinking about how we can improve our community and our economy. And I just wanted to plant a seed about some of the things that have really shaped my thoughts this year. This Ezra Klein Show podcast topic, Your Mind is Being Fracked, led me down a rabbit hole about the sacredness of human attention. And Stolen Focus, Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again, was a book gifted to me by our friend and neighbor Jody Chaffin. And that has been really powerful to learn about. I loved reading this book, Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transform Us. I continue to be inspired by Wendell Berry and his notion of home economics and his notions of economics in general. I loved Tina Knoll's memoir, matriarch. And I don't know if you know this, but Tina is Beyonce's mom. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm still obsessed with Beyonce. I had the pleasure of going to the Cowboy Carter tour this summer, and intellectualizing Beyonce's body of work continues to be my favorite pastime. And I do labor to try to figure out what it has to do with Ely. So if you ever want to hear about it, you can tell me. We, continuing on the thought work, we went to the Explore Minnesota Tourism Conference this year, learned a lot, got to thinking about storytelling and the role of AI in the future of storytelling. We sponsored some local folks in taking some classes through the Foundation for Intentional Community. I put this up here because they have the phrase from me to we, and that's actually showing up a lot in the things that I've been consuming, including this book called The Upswing, which was written by Robert Putnam, who was featured in the Join or Die film. The theme of how are we going to go from me to we is central to that book. And it's also central to this book called The Power of Bridging, which Johnny Hyde has also been promoting through Braver Angels. A really good read. We went to the Northland Foundation collaboration with Northspan to learn about rural development hubs, and we learned what they put together as a gap analysis for our specific community. I'm going past go here. Okay, my point was the concept of regionalism keeps coming up. So that is where our heads are going for the future. Cluster development is the new economic development. Regionalism, collaboration should happen on the multi-county level. The power of regionalism has been a persistent theme in economic development for over a generation. So when we're thinking about what we've been learning and where we're going, I've been spending more time in Grand Marais, trying to get more out on the Iron Range and learn more about our neighbors, because our strategies do need to be more regional. We've gone to some rural housing workshops and webinars to figure out what do our towns need to do to be incremental development housing ready. And we participated in this program where we learned about that gap analysis. And I guess my point in sharing all this is that we're trying really, 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 really hard to pay attention to what our neighbors are saying and what other institutions are saying and what can we do to strategically benefit our community and economy. I'm still talking about the book Nexus. I haven't given up on that. That's super interesting to me. There's basically a thesis that we must strengthen and protect our social bonds. Among humans, the precondition for cooperation isn't similarity, it's the ability to exchange information. As long as we are able to converse, we might find some shared story that could bring us closer, which is deep in my conviction that conversation and human connection are both sacred, and that has deepened the work towards strengthening our social fabric using our Boundary Waters Connect assets and resources. And there's a role for everyone to play in this process. And going back to the family tree, right? So Boundary Waters Connect is a program of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness. Another program of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness is the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. It is donors to the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters that fund Boundary Waters Connect programming. And neighbors like you, thank you to anyone who contributed to our Give to the Max Day campaign. The numbers for this year are a little fuzzy because Jess joined partway through, but we have an honest estimate that in 2026, Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness will be investing $200,000 in Boundary Waters Connect efforts and programs, and trying to do everything we can to be a positive contribution to the community and the economies along the edge of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. And our treasurer's not here, but I put this plus sign here because I'm a very ambitious lady. So not greedy. I feel very grateful, so grateful for this, but our dreams are really, 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 really big. Thank you so much for listening to that. So that's it. That's what we did this year.
Before we go to questions, we did have somebody stop in quickly that couldn't be here at the beginning and couldn't stay and asked me to give a quick announcement of yet another way that you can strengthen the social bonds and show up in community. There's a mutual aid group that started in the last year or so, and they are having a mixer and gift swap on December 2nd. You come at 6 o'clock, you build your own sandwich and have chips and drinks, and then at 7, there's a dice game where you bring 1 to 3 wrapped presents and you can win some presents through this game. So that's on December 2nd, and I have a small amount of flyers if anybody wants it. But I am also happy to walk around and hold the microphone for everybody to take questions or ask questions. The podcast.
Oh, that's a wonderful question. No, actually, so you may be aware that I host the What's Up Ely podcast, and that is a program of the Ely Area Tourism Bureau. So yes, this is a Boundary Waters Connect update. So it does not include the 24 some odd podcast episodes recorded this year, or my affiliation with the Ely Folk School, or Jess's affiliation with being a member of the Northern Lakes Arts Association Board. I'd be happy to tell you about those things anytime if you have any questions.
Also, we did have an update on the chat on Zoom that the treasurer is on Zoom for NNW and says that the plus side is all good.
Thank you, David. And I forgot, I wanted to add a slide here. So the Ely for Ely effort is going to, our big culmination was the workshop, but as a thank you and just one last opportunity to connect for the 2025 season, we're hosting a holiday party on December 9th from 5 to 7 outside the Ely Winton History Museum. The museum will be open, and so attendees can go through the museum. We're just going to be mixing and mingling. There will be catering, beverages, and for funsies, if you want to, you're welcome to dress vintage inspired. You don't have to. All are welcome, but some of us are getting playful.
If there are any questions, I can bring the microphone to you. But while I do that, I will also remind everyone that the grocery store is closed on holidays, and there's a projected snowstorm tomorrow. So you might want to do some holiday grocery shopping today. Just a quick community update for everybody.
Don't worry, I already bought 8 cans of green beans for my green bean casserole. I'm giving up this year, everyone. An important announcement is that I'm no longer pretending like I think fresh green beans are better.
I will not be sharing that opinion. My grandpa was a farmer and he grew green beans. So I cannot say that. And he is on Zoom right now, listening with my mom.
All right. Well, I just want to take a moment to say I got a little bit down a rabbit hole last night. I was thinking trying to reflect on all this year held and all that was in it and all that we might want to share. And I'm an avid journaler. You may know this. I have 6 notebooks full of notes from this year. And I was reminded that one epiphany I had over the course of the year is I think we should bring love letters back. And they could be platonic love letters. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to honor that with the limited time left in this year, but just please know that if I could, I would write a love letter to each and every one of you. I really, really love spending this time with you all and serving the community through Boundary Waters Connect. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do so and to be able to tell you about it here today. So I hope you have a wonderful holiday hiatus, and I fully plan on seeing you like 100 times between now and January 6th.